guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster. I just wanted to do one last video on this little mini dehydrating series, and that is to talk about dehydrating vegetables. Now obviously we've done ground beef, we've done beef jerky, and what I want to look at today are just some sort of mainstays for the kind of thing that I would be adding to that if I was rehydrating it at camp to make a meal out of it. So take the ground beef for example. You know, I would normally have mushrooms, onions, maybe some peppers. I would normally do chilies, but I didn't have any in. But you know, you can use anything you like. You can use things like, what am I thinking of? Things like sweet corn I've dehydrated, leeks, garlic, onion, carrots. Potatoes are a bit hit and miss. I've never managed to get them to work, but I know people who have. But kind of, you know, any kind of normal vegetable is generally okay to dehydrate. Now you may notice I've got a pan here simmering in front of me. You might see a little bit of the heat haze coming off. And what I'm going to do, let me just tilt this camera down a little bit for you. So now you can see this pan. And basically what I'm going to be doing with the assistance of just this little sieve is giving these a very quick blanch. Now it's quite important that in order to dehydrate things, certainly things like onions, peppers, even things like the mushrooms, if you dip them into quite hot water first, it really does help. Now I'm probably not going to have enough space in here, so I'm going to dunk the whole lot in. Come on, in you go. Lost a couple, hold on. There we go. Now you just want to make sure they sit in that water for between 30 seconds and maybe a minute. What this does, essentially, is it helps start sort of not so much cooking but breaking down some of the vegetable. Now I won't go into the boring scientific part of it because I'll be honest, I don't fully understand it myself, but every time I've tried dehydrating veg I've always found it works a lot better if you've blanched or even parboiled your veg in advance. Now mushrooms, I mean, they tend to kind of cook very quickly anyway, and this is not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to cook this veg. All we're trying to do is get a little bit of the moisture in it, and I think, and I may be wrong, so any scientists out there, please feel free to correct me, but I think the blanching process essentially kind of breaks down some of the fibres, certainly in things like onions and peppers, where they're not kind of really, what's the word I'm looking for here? They don't really want to be dehydrated. You know, their natural structure kind of fights against it. Whereas once you've parboiled them or blanched them, whatever you want to class it as, they're much more susceptible and they tend to dehydrate much quicker. So I am going to whiz through these other two lots of vegetables. I won't bore you with loads of talking while I do it, and we will come back when we're ready to rack these up. Right then, so that is everything blanched, and what you will find is that some vegetables take longer than others. As a general rule of thumb, I tend to find that the harder the vegetable, the slightly longer it takes, which is fairly common sense, I think. You know, something like mushrooms take no time at all, the onions a little bit longer, and the peppers with that kind of hard outer skin a little bit longer as well. And really what you're looking for at the end of it is for it to have either sort of wilted and gone either a little bit spongy or a little bit softer. And to me that's normally a fairly good reckoning that it will dehydrate quite well. Now this this stock that we've got in front of us, if you're anything like me, you don't like wasting things, this will make a very good base for something like a soup. or you can kind of condense it down into something a little bit thicker and use it as a sauce. I like to keep this kind of thing. If you're not going to use it straight away, you can put it away and freeze it, bring it back out in sections as you need it, use ice cube trays or something like that. So I'm just going to let these cool down very, very quickly, and I'll come back and we'll start getting these on the racks. Right then guys, so you've seen me do this before. All you're doing is taking your pieces of vegetables, distributing them as evenly as you can over your racks without getting any sort of big clumps and lumps on there. And that is it. Now these vegetables, I would suggest, are probably going to take 6 to 8 hours, maybe 10 at a push for things like the peppers. And all I will be doing, once I've got these all laid out, this will be going into my dehydrator. It's not the type of dehydrator that you can control the temperature, because it was a cheapie, and to be honest, it's always worked really well for me. You know, some people will insist that you need to have temperature control and these kind of things for your dehydrator. I'm sure it works and I'm sure it's more efficient, but for me this actually works just as well, or I've never had a problem with it, should I say. Now I'm only going to use 3 racks. I've actually got some other stuff dehydrating at the moment, but essentially, you know, you can see this one nice and evenly spaced out. This one with the onions is going to be a little bit thicker. Let's have a look. I'm just making sure I'm kind of, even if things are touching each other, it's not a huge problem, and they will shrink as they dehydrate, but I don't think that's over full. There's still plenty of airflow going to get into there. And then for the mushrooms, which are still quite soggy and very hot, so the mushrooms I kind of want to spread those out quite well as well. Let's get the last few out of there. So again, with these mushrooms, doesn't matter if they're touching, it really isn't an issue. These are going to dry to the point where they're going to be brittle. So if any of them stick together, you can just snap them off, and that is essentially what I'm doing for the mushrooms. So I'm going to get these into the dehydrator. As I say, I will run it for, I don't know, I'll probably just run it overnight, to be honest. Is the benefit of things like this, and I do often get asked this question, is that you can't really dehydrate things too much once there's no moisture in there at all, and that's what we're aiming for here. We're not making a biltong or a jerky or I don't know, dried fruit or something like that that we're planning on eating fairly soon. Therefore you can leave a little bit of moisture in there. This is designed, or this is intended to be stored, and as such you want to get as much moisture, or all of the moisture, out as you possibly can. So if you were to leave this on for 15 hours rather than 8, it really wouldn't do anything to it. Well, I don't know, could it? You can't, you know, this is a really low temperature. You can't really burn things in the dehydrator I have. You might be in one that you can set up a much higher temperature, but to be honest, I've left this on overnight, having left it on for maybe 4 or 5 hours in the day prior to that, and I've had no problems whatsoever. So let me get this into the dehydrator. We'll come back by the magic of editing tomorrow morning, and I'll show you the finished result. So it's now the next morning, guys. The dehydrator's been running overnight, and what we have here is our dehydrated veg. Now I've tried to keep this separated on this plate so you can see it. Obviously we've got the mushrooms here, nice and dry, same with the red onion and with the peppers. Now there is no moisture in any of this whatsoever, it is completely bone dry. And as I said on the previous video regarding the mince and the ground beef, I'm going to be storing this away just in a Ziploc bag for a few days, because I'm going to be making another video quite shortly about combining all this kind of stuff together to make camp meals, and just show you how it is that I would do it. But if you were looking to sort of, you know, preserve this longer term, you're going to be looking at things like Kilner or mason jars, maybe something you can even sort of pump the air out with, maybe like a vacuum sealer, You know, you can even put them in kind of normal jars or even Ziplocs with kind of like a silica pack, just to kind of keep the moisture content out. And really it's about keeping it in an airtight environment with as little moisture as possible. You know, if you look at Google kind of food preservation for prepping, there's loads of things online that will show you how to do it better than what I will normally do. I normally only go down the basic route, but that's just what I do. I never keep things for that long. But yeah, so I hope it was useful, guys. Comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Cheers, guys.